The Nsude Pyramids have been a well-kept secret of Igbo history. Once a major iconic structure of Igboland, this group of circular step pyramids, built by ancient Igbo people and maintained for generations by mystical devotees before colonialism, have disappeared. Although there are very few pyramids discovered so far in West Africa, amazingly, scholars believe certain features of the Nsude Pyramids show that they predate most pyramids in the world, including the earliest Egyptian pyramids. Meanwhile, our memories of them grow fainter, with only a couple of photographs taken in the first half of the 20th century, and vague outlines in the ground remaining to show they ever existed. But ardent researchers continue to work on finding out more about these mysterious pyramids. When and why were they first constructed? What did the new explorative energy field photography reveal about them? And is the rumor that they were intentionally destroyed and erased from official history in the 20th century just a conspiracy theory? Today, I'll answer all these questions while we delve into the mystifying Nsude Pyramids story. A story that stretches across mythology, archaeology, and even modern energy field photography. Please take a moment to like this video. I need all the support I can get. Thank you. The Nsude Pyramids were located close to the foot of Udi Hill in Nsude, a village in Enugu State in southeastern Nigeria. Ancient oral accounts say they were first constructed in the topmost altitudes of the boundary villages at Umuaka and Uguto. There are two main known sites that had pyramids. The first site in Uguto contained a set of 10 pyramids, standing on 2 rows with 5 on each row. The second site in Umuaka, in the part of the community overlooking Ngwo and Nkanu, had 1 large pyramid. The first recorded discovery by Europeans was made in 1891 by a British explorer, Luke Walter, during an extensive geographical survey and explorations for solid minerals in the area. Not much is known about this discovery, as, oddly, the documents in which he wrote about them disappeared and have never been found. Later, in the 1910s, the missionary George Basden, in his book titled Among the Igbos, wrote that he visited the 10 pyramids near Nsude and talked to the Uto priest about them. But the most important visual record we currently have came in the 1930s, when the Welsh ethnographer G.I. Jones, who at the time was a colonial district officer in the Owerri province, took pictures of the pyramids. These photographs are now the only known surviving images of the pyramids. The Nsude Pyramids were made from red earth and clay and hardened under the tropical sun. And despite the seemingly fragile material, they once stood firm on the Udi highlands for centuries, maybe even a millennium. They were maintained by dedicated devotees who were said to have preserved them using a mixture of red mud and cow dung. The pyramids had a step design, just like the earliest pyramids in Egypt. More about this later. The base layer of each pyramid was about 60 feet wide, the next layer 45 feet wide, and each of the 5 steps grew smaller in width as they rose upward. This style, the step pyramid, seems to appear in the early pyramid evolution of several civilizations across the world, including in Egypt, Mexico, Central America, and Sudan. In an article published in the early 20th century, the archaeologist Kenneth Murray, describing the Nsude Pyramids, said they were, and I quote, 10 solid mud pyramids about 1.25 miles from Nsude, but in open ground and not visible from Nsude. These were circular and estimated to be 27 feet in diameter, 18 to 19 feet high, and in 2 rows 20 yards apart and 70 yards long. In each row, they were about 12 feet apart. Both Kenneth Murray and George Basden recorded that they were told at the time that the pyramids were erected for the deity Uto, either to honor Uto as part of a religious mandate or to invoke the deity's divine power for killing thieves. Meanwhile, oral accounts of the indigents proposed 2 different theories about the purpose of the pyramids. 1. Some believe the pyramids were constructed for defensive surveillance during intercommunity wars, which, they say, is why they were located on high ground and at the border of the community. This theory seems plausible because Nsude had a history of conflict with neighboring communities. On the other hand, the second theory claims the pyramids were monuments in honor of Uto Nsude, a revered warrior who was later deified. Despite these theories, many local scholars insist the pyramids were primarily spiritual temples and not military towers. On the origin of the pyramids, a religious theory worth looking at comes from Igbo creation myths. According to Igbo legends, after the Great Flood, scholars have drawn a parallel between this flood and the biblical Noah flood in the book of Genesis. Anyway, after this great flood, Eri, the immortal ancestor of the Igbo people, descended from the heavens in a divine craft. He landed at the confluence of the Niger and Omambala rivers. Because there was water all over the earth, Eri was told to build a mound of sand over the wet ground to create land. This became the primeval mound, the first sacred mound's temple, which was shaped like an anthill. Many Igbo elders say this was the prototype of the pyramids that came after. This story mirrors the Egyptian creation myth, where the sacred mound, known as the Benben, rose from the floodwaters of Nun to become the first land that the creator god Atum stepped on. This Egyptian myth corresponds directly to the Igbo story of creation. The theory of a massive flood caused by a celestial collision is widely acknowledged, even in scientific quarters. And this is said to be part of a pattern that repeats itself every tens of thousands of years. It's been hypothesized that the Egyptian and Igbo creation myths, along with the sacred mound-building undertakings, were created with the hope that the knowledge of a coming cataclysmic flood would survive to warn future generations. Also on the spiritual theme, according to the European researcher Nenad Djurdjevic, the five-step design of the pyramids is symbolic. This number of steps represent the 5 levels of the soul, which is an attribute of sacred mountains like Mount Olympus and Mount Zion. Across many ancient cultures, the stepped form represents ascending toward the heavens, or moving from earth toward the divine. In Igbo spirituality, this symbolism fits perfectly, because to the Igbo, the top of certain hills, mounds, and high places are considered sacred homes of the gods. The exact age of the Nsude Pyramids is unknown. Initially, scholars dated them to around 900 AD, but oral tradition is firm on the fact that they were created much earlier and that the ones photographed were actually newer reconstructions of older pyramids. Meanwhile, researchers point out that Nsude Pyramids share a key feature with the earliest Egyptian pyramids, the step design. The earliest Egyptian pyramids were step pyramids. Egyptologists believe this was to serve as a gigantic stairway by which the soul of a deceased pharaoh could ascend to the heavens. The most popular of the Egyptian step pyramids is the Pyramid of Djoser. Located in Saqqara, the Pyramid of Djoser is dated to the 27th century BC, that is about 4,700 years ago, and is said to be the first Egyptian pyramid to be built with stone. Most of the earliest and smallest Egyptian pyramids are to be found in Saqqara, where it seems Egyptians experimented and got better at making bricks and building sturdier pyramids. And as such, the earlier pyramids in Saqqara were smaller and made with mud bricks, most of which are now dilapidated. Egyptologists say that it was much later, during the 4th dynasty, that Egyptians transitioned from the step pyramid to building what became known as the true pyramids, that is, pyramids with smooth sides. Is it far-fetched to say that the first pyramids were tentative and small because, having acquired the knowledge from elsewhere, either via migration or trade routes, Egyptians continued to innovate to construct sturdier and larger pyramids for increasingly more grandiose reasons? The discovery of the Dan Baki Pyramid Mound in Niger Republic feeds into this theory of West Africa being the origin of pyramids. The Egyptologist Sole Garba reported that a study of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic texts containing the name of the village led him to discover this pyramid in the Sahara. The Dan Baki Pyramid is said to be about 4,500 years old. And interestingly, there's a dilapidated structure beside the pyramid that appears to be a sphinx, and in the same pose as the Great Sphinx. But for some reasons, the ancient Igbo pyramid culture stagnated. According to historians, this is not surprising, because in life, the creature that ventures into the unknown is usually more adventurous and more likely to innovate. While we definitely cannot draw a direct line between the Nsude Pyramids, Danbaki Pyramid, and the Egyptian pyramids, we can logically assume that the Nsude Pyramids are far older than written records suggest. These parallels give Nsude Pyramids global and spiritual significance, not just as local structures, but as part of a broader human tradition of sacred architecture. In the mid-2000s, European researchers studying ancient monuments used an advanced scanning system called the Oldfield New Energy Vision Field Camera to carry out non-invasive explorations of the inside of ancient structures, especially pyramids. This technology visualizes energy fields that are invisible to the human eye and gives an idea of what lay within inaccessible structures. This is similar to the much-publicized scan of the Giza pyramids, where thermal scans revealed anomalies suggesting the existence of empty chambers at the bottom of the Pyramid of Khufu and massive underground structures beneath the Pyramid of Khafre. But with the Nsude Pyramids, there are no structures to be scanned. Nevertheless, the researchers claim the camera also works on images, and remarkably, when they scanned the photographs of the Nsude Pyramids, they detected energy vortexes, geometric patterns, and indications of underground voids beneath the pyramids. This, they say, suggests that the pyramids may have been built above underground chambers or energy vortexes, similar to what has been theorized beneath some of the smaller Egyptian pyramids. This feeds into myths that exist across many cultures, from Africa to the Americas, about ancient underground cities. In the Igbo version, myths describe an underground city of lights, believed to be at the navel of the earth, built by Eri after the flood. Could the Nsude Pyramids be marking such a place? We cannot say for certain, but the energy photographs give researchers a new reason to investigate. By the mid-20th century, the pyramids were deteriorating. As colonial interruption deepened and the traditional rituals tied to them faded, adherents stopped maintaining them. Vulnerable to rain, wind, and erosion, and without any maintenance, the pyramids crumbled quickly, until all that was left was traces. Although a troubling rumor persists that some of the pyramids were intentionally destroyed in the late 1930s, this does not seem to make general sense. But some historians argue that colonial authorities often erased or downplayed sub-Saharan African achievements, and evidence of a complex civilization in southeastern Nigeria long before colonial contact would challenge the narratives of African primitiveness. Definitely a structure that might turn out to predate or be contemporaneous with the pyramids in Egypt would disrupt the preferred Egyptian cradle of civilization story. Recently, there have been renewed calls for deeper research into the Nsude Pyramids mystery and requests for proper scientific excavation of the sites where they once stood. Meanwhile, the little we know about these pyramids challenge everything we think we know about Africa's past. Perhaps there are answers hidden beneath the soil of Nsude, waiting to be uncovered. Thanks for watching.